3 spine-chilling true Easter horrors unexplained. Sinister secrets exposed from the grave. Jessica prepared for a bright Easter celebration. But little did she know that a dark force lurked beneath the picture-perfect facade of her suburban home. As she tacked up colorful decorations, the sun shined through the windows, illuminating the chaos of her 2 young children, Lily and Max, who were gleefully painting eggs at the kitchen table. Their laughter filled the air, an innocent soundtrack to a seemingly perfect life. Everything felt under control until that note slid beneath the door. The ink was rough against her fingers, the words chilling her blood. Beware the shadows. They seek vengeance. Her heart raced. Was it a prank? Jessica chuckled softly, trying to shake off the unease. The neighborhood was generally serene. Yet, as dusk approached, waves of discomfort washed over her. Footprints appeared in the snow-covered backyard. Footprints that belonged to no one she knew. Whispers echoed outside, ghostly murmurs that sent icy fingers climbing up her spine. What was happening? Was it all in her head? In the days that followed, the vibrant colors of Easter began to lose their luster. A heavy tension settled over the neighborhood like an unwanted fog. Mrs. Henderson, her elderly neighbor, approached her, eyes wide with fear. You should know, she urged, the family who lived in your house, they died one Easter. No one ever spoke of it, but things still linger. Jessica felt her stomach twist. All those years of security, tied to a home steeped in darkness. She brushed it off, focusing on hiding eggs for Lily and Max. It'll be fun, she told herself, trying to push the fear aside. But as morning broke, a sense of dread clung to her, heavy as a stone. Where are you, my little birds? She called out, her heart thumping louder with each unanswered plea. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Panic twisted in her gut as she realized Lily and Max were truly missing. My babies, she called out into the crisp air, desperation clawing at her throat. The garden that had once felt like a sanctuary now transformed into a maze of shadows. Jessica sprinted down familiar paths, shadows stretching like sinister fingers, the laughter of her children now a haunting echo in her mind. Lily's giggle faded into something darker, chilling her resolve. Had the whispers turned to screams? Were they too far gone to return? The neighbors watched from their windows, faces pale as the reality set in the truth of hidden horrors lurking beneath their idyllic lives. Just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of crimson, a cold breath wafted against her neck. She turned, heart racing, trapped between the truth she feared and the shadows that danced just beyond her vision. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of sorrow and despair. Help us. Jessica stumbled back, the weight of her choices crashing down. There were questions left unanswered in the growing darkness, the fabric of her once protected life beginning to tear. What had she unleashed, and could she reach her children before it was too late? The winds howled ominously as night descended, wrapping the neighborhood in an unsettling cloak of darkness. Jessica's heart raced, each beat echoing in the silent void where her children should have been. Panic clawed at her throat like a desperate animal. Where are you? Please come back, she cried, her voice trembling as it danced into the night. Then, just as the shadows around her seemed to deepen, she heard a familiar giggle, a sound she'd given anything to hear. Lily! Max! She shouted again, pushing forward through the tangled brush. But the laughter morphed into something mocking, a cruel mimicry playing tricks on her ears. A sudden rustle in the bushes caught her attention. She turned sharply, instinct gripping her heart. There, at the edge of the yard, was a flicker of light, wavering like a candle flame. Is someone there? She called out, the words escaping her lips as a whisper. Silence answered, thick as the air around her, making her gut twist uncomfortably. She hesitated only a moment before edging closer to the light. Each step felt heavier than the last, the ground almost pulling her back. Was it a trap? The thought sent an icy chill rippling along her spine. But a greater fear pushed her forward, the desperate need to find her children. As she reached the spot, she discovered what looked like an old lantern. Its glass cracked and dirty with dust. She instinctively picked it up, the weight feeling unnatural in her hands. With a deep breath, she would not let fear paralyze her. She fumbled for the switch, coaxing the feeble flame back to life. The light flickered, casting eerie shadows on the snow, morphing into ghastly shapes against the night sky. "Mommy!" A tiny voice rang out, not far from her. It was impossibly close, yet just beyond her grasp. Jessica's heart soared. "Lily! Max! Where are you?" She spun around, the lantern barely illuminating the suffocating darkness that surrounded her. But then her blood froze as a figure emerged from the depths of the shadows, slow and deliberate. The lantern's light caught just enough to reveal a face pallid, twisted, and sorrowful. It smiled at her, but the grin held no warmth. Instead, it echoed a sinister promise, a threat hidden within an innocent facade. "Children need to play," the figure said, its voice a haunting melody that made shockwaves race through her. Jessica stumbled backward, the lantern slipping from her fingers. The glass shattered on the ground, sending shards skittering across the ground like tiny stars falling from the sky. "Leave them alone," she screamed, panic overtaking her. But as she turned to run, the shadows thickened around her, and the laughter morphed again, this time into cries echoing through the dark. "Mommy!" The sound was unmistakable, edging on despair. Jessica's heart was now pounding in her ears as she frantically searched for the source of the cries. "I'm coming!" she shouted, hope mingling with desperation. She darted toward the sounds, oblivious to the dark figure lingering just behind. The whispers intensified, a chorus of shadows urging her to retreat. But she pressed on, fear sharpening her senses, and then she saw them, standing small and alone in the moonlight, just outside the perimeter of the flickering shadows. "Lily! Max!" she cried, arms reaching out to embrace her children. But as she drew closer, their expressions twisted, fear carved into their small faces, eyes glazed over with terror. Something was wrong. "What happened?" she whispered, desperation clawing at her lungs. Their tiny hands reached toward her, but it felt like they were drifting farther away, caught just out of reach. And then the world around her went black. The cries faded into silence. Jessica felt her footing slip away, uncertainty enveloping her like a suffocating shroud. In that moment, she sensed the truth. The shadows weren't just in the house. They were inside her, feeding off her fear, wrapping around her thoughts, binding her to the dark fabric of despair. As she fought against the pull, everything slipped away. And just as she felt herself being drawn into the darkness, she heard a voice, clear like a bell, cutting through the gloom. "Help us, before they take you too." But who was she fighting? Was it the shadows or something worse? The night stretched endlessly, a void begging for answers, as the invisible grip constricted tighter around her. Who would she trust when nothing seemed real anymore? The darkness seemed to throb, as if alive. Jessica felt herself floating within it, lost in a sea of black where time held no meaning. The panic surged anew, like icy fingers wrapping tighter around her throat, choking her breath. She could almost see the outline of her children, their faces now ghostly images pressed against the walls of her mind. Were they real, or were they another trick of the shadows? "Help us before they take you too." The voice echoed again, a melody that sliced through the haze but offered no comfort. There was urgency in those words, a primal fear woven into the fabric of the call. Jessica struggled against the inexorable pull, a grip she couldn't see, only feel a weight pressing inward, smothering hope. With each heartbeat, she fought to race forward, but the unseen barriers cracked further with every movement. "Lily! Max!" she cried out, the desperation in her voice ricocheting against the shadows. But only silence returned, thick and tainted. Then, from the void, a flash shot through her thoughts. Something in her shifted as the memory of the lantern ignited her spirit. A flicker of resolve. She focused, reached out with unseen hands to grasp the essence of that flame, its glow a beacon in the overwhelming dark. "Stay with me," she urged, but received only the unforgiving quiet in reply. Abruptly, a sickening sound slithered through the stillness. A low, guttural laugh. It seemed to come from all directions, swirling around her like a predator stalking its prey. Her heart pounded erratically, each thud reverberating against the unseen barriers of frantic emphasis of her racing thoughts. But then, as if woven into the fabric of that laughter, another sound broke through a child's voice, sweet yet tinged with something sinister. "Play with us." The whisper floated, seductive and light, yet edged with malice. It was them, she knew. Her babies wrapped in an illusion that twisted innocence into despair. The shadows shifted, forming shapes, silhouettes mocking her own. They danced around her, dragging her deeper into the void. Jessica felt their breath, hot and foul, as they encircled her. "Join us? Forever." "No," she snarled through gritted teeth, forcing herself to remember their laughter, their warmth. "My children." A distant shimmer caught her eye, brighter than before. She surged towards it, clawing against the darkness. As she moved, an anguished wail echoed in the abyss, ripping at her heart. "Help us." The plea was no longer just a whisper. It became a deafening chorus, hundreds of lost souls crying for release. "What do you want?" Jessica yelled, rage and sorrow spilling from her lips. She stumbled as the shadows pressed closer, wrapping around her collar like a noose. Before she could even breathe in relief, the flicker of light vanished. In a split second, she was cast back into utter darkness, the shadows pressing in on her from all sides. Silence returned, flooding every crevice cold and unforgiving. Suddenly, a hand gripped her wrist. Jessica gasped, spinning towards the contact. "Who is there?" Her voice wavered, uncertainty gnawing at her. But there was no answer. Instead, a weight pulled her down, something heavier than fear, suffocating and thick. The shadows tumbled around her like a swirling storm, each tendril whispering secrets, intertwining with her thoughts of dread. Then she saw him. The twisted figure from before returned, eyes glinting like shards of broken glass. "They want to play too, you know." The sickening smile stretched wider, encompassing the darkness. "Join us." The dread was overwhelming, infesting her every thought. But somewhere, buried deep in her soul, a spark ignited a memory. "You're not real," she screamed, clinging to her fading hope like a lifebuoy. Everything felt frozen. The shadows halted, the figure before her tilting its head, an expression of sheer surprise flashing across its face. "Not real?" It mimicked, echoes blasting into the depths of her mind, twisting and shaping into something vile. What if? And just like that, it vanished, leaving Jessica suspended in an emptiness where fear mingled with unwavering doubt. Had she been saved, or had they just pulled her deeper into their trap? The silence now felt alive, pressing down with the weight of 1,000 lives lost. The only sound left was her own heartbeat, thudding louder, desperate for a moment of clarity. But somewhere, deep within the black abyss, she could still feel them. "Help us," the voice lingered, pure and unwavering, echoing off the walls of despair like a haunting promise. Each syllable crashed over her like a wave, powerful and relentless. Would she give in to the shadows, or would she fight to reclaim her children amidst the void? As her resolve flickered, the darkness still pressed in. And then, in a chilling whisper, the shadows spoke once more. "You must choose." What choice lay ahead? What would Jessica confront? The agony of the dark awaited, but what lay beneath it? The truth, hidden as it was calling her name. The weight of the darkness intensified, pressing down until Jessica could scarcely breathe. Each time she opened her mouth to call out to her children, the shadows tightened their grip around her throat, effectively silencing her cries. Panic surged through her veins, coursing like venom. But the ominous whispers continued, softer now, weaving their sinister spell. Will you choose? They taunted, the voices morphing like smoke around her, shifting and curling as if they relished her fear. You can join them. Jessica's pulse quickened. Images of Lily and Max, their laughter lighting up her world, flickered in her mind, sharp, vivid, but so tantalizingly out of reach. As the shadows swirled around her, long tendrils reached out, curling around her arms and legs, consuming her with suffocating empathy for the lost souls around her. They felt desperate, yearning, and frightfully real. She sensed their sorrow, woven into the fabric of the void. Help us! A cacophony of voices surged, merging with Jessica's thoughts, invading her consciousness. The wails echoed through her like an unending thunderstorm, each cry laced with fear and regret. She fought against their pain, pushing through the suffocation that threatened to consume her. But the more effort she exerted, the heavier the dark became. Then came a moment of stillness. A chilling silence enveloped her like a shroud. She felt it in her bones, a portent of something monstrous. And then she saw it, an ephemeral glow flickering at the far corner of her mind, captivating and unreachable. Follow the light, the shadows hissed, the voices now dipping lower, almost hypnotic. No, Jessica shouted defiantly. She was not about to fall into their trap again. Not when hope flickered so close, just out of reach. In defiance, she turned her back on the glow and instead focused on the memories of her children, their joy, their innocence, their safety. With every heartbeat, she drew strength from that love, making it her weapon against the void that threatened to swallow her whole. The dark began to shift, vibrating with her resolve. The shadows screeched in protest, a cacophony of dying echoes. What do you think you can do, human? They spat, cold and unyielding. You cannot save them. I can't lose them, she screamed back, her voice tearing the silence to shreds. With that, she surged forward into the dark, every muscle pulsing with raw determination. The shadows roiled, angry and thrashing, pushing back, but she pressed on, her heart a drumbeat in the dark, closer to the glow, closer to what she hoped, desperately, could be salvation. Suddenly, the silhouette of a small figure emerged from the depths. A silhouette clad in white, shining like a beacon against the black. Jessica's heart leaped. Could it be? Mommy? The voice was small, trembling, but unmistakably her daughter-s. No, Lily, Max. The words ruptured from her throat, a primal scream of hope. But as she reached for the figure, something ice-cold gripped her wrist, pulling her back with terrifying force. Do you want to see what we hide? The twisted figure from before reappeared, sneering, its eyes glinting with malicious glee. It leaned closer, its putrid breath washing over her. If you chase that light, you may find a truth you wish you hadn't. The shadows coiled tighter around her, and Jessica's mind flooded with horrifying images. Scenes of her children, no longer laughing but lost, ensnared in the same darkness, their faces marred with shadows of despair. Let them go, she screamed, but the figure merely laughed, eyes dancing with cruel delight. They're already here, sweet Jessica. Isn't that what you chose? The pulsing light flickered, then dimmed, leaving Jessica standing on the precipice of a decision more terrible than she could have imagined. What truth awaited her if she dared to move forward? Would following the light redeem her children, or lead her to an end she could never recover from? And within the suffocating dark, the shadows hissed, their whispers rising to a fever pitch. The choice was made before you even arrived. What dread awaited in that luminous glow? Would Jessica find her children or face an unimaginable horror? The hollow laughter followed her, lingering just beyond reach, as the darkness closed in once more. Jessica felt the icy grip around her wrist tighten, squeezing the very breath from her lungs. The nightmares swirling within her mind intensified, images of Lily and Max merging with the shadows, both calling for her yet trapped within them. The laughter from the figure twisted into a grotesque melody, echoing through her thoughts and shattering her resolve. No, she shouted again, desperation scraping at her throat. I will find them. I will not let you take them from me. Each word felt like a defiance against the suffocating gloom. With a surge of energy born from her love for her children, she pulled against the shadows that held her captive. They hissed in anger, their whispers now a storm of chaos. You cannot win. They are ours. They will never be free. The grip around her wrist loosened just enough for her to turn back toward the flickering glow, her heart hammering like an animal desperate to escape. She felt that light was her only hope, a fragile thread weaving through the malevolent fabric of the dark. As she took a cautious step closer, the glow transformed. It now pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing her in. Fear battled with determination within her, each pulse resonating with the love she bore for her children. "Mommy!" A voice cried again, clearer now, echoing through the twisting shadows. The brilliance flickered a little brighter, revealing shapes moving beyond the veil. Little hands reaching out, grasping for warmth, for safety. It was Lily and Max. But before she could call out again, the figure loomed closer, gray and rotted. It clawed at the edges of her vision, wanting to drown out the light. "You don't know what you're doing. You must understand," it hissed. "To save them means losing your own soul. Are you ready to abandon everything?" Terror gripped her spine. The figure's voice twisted her insides and sent dread coursing through her veins. Behind the figure, she could see their faces, her children drenched in shadows yet trying to break through the darkness like flowers struggling for sunlight. Her heart ached at the sight of them, distorted yet unmistakably hers. "Please, don't," Lily cried, her small hands outstretched. Muffled and faint, Max echoed her. "Mommy, help us." Jessica's resolve strengthened. She pushed forward, propelled by fear and a fierce maternal instinct. The glow beckoned, and with every step, the tendrils of darkness grasped at her, desperate to pull her back into despair. "It's a lie," she screamed through the chaos, barely able to hear herself. "I won't give in, not to you. I will find my children." Within the darkness, doubts crept in, whispering caution. But as she reached toward the glow, determination surged. Every nerve in her body ignited with fervor. She reached deep within herself for a strength she hadn't known existed. Her fingers brushed the light and a searing heat surged through her. Pain lanced through her body, and she was ripped free of the shadow's grasp, propelled into the glow. The agonizing laughter faded, swallowed by the brilliance consuming her. But as she burst into the light, the world shifted. "What have you done?" The voice of the figure echoed in her mind, layered with rage and fear. "You've sealed your fate." Jessica squinted, the brightness blurring her vision. Shapes began to form around her, ambiguous figures draped in shimmering light. Were they her children? Was this freedom or another trick? Breath caught in her throat. She felt suspended between worlds, a terrifying precipice. Had she saved them, or had she inadvertently led them into another fate, darker and more twisted? As realization crashed over her, shadows began to loom again. What truth awaited her here, behind the veil of light? Had she really transcended the darkness or merely stumbled into a new horror? The fear grew, a weight pushing down as she waited, heart racing. The flickering shadows began to swirl, creeping back as the ominous presence returned. What had she truly unleashed by reaching for the light? The laughter resumed, now higher and more chaotic, wrapping around her mind once more. Standing in that shimmering void, Jessica braced herself for what awaited. The shadows whispered intent, ready to shatter her resolve once again. The world shifted in a chaotic whirl of light and shadow. Jessica felt the heat of the glow tugging at her, raising every hair on her body like static electricity. She stood there, paralyzed, caught between the spectral figures that flickered in and out of focus. They were close but not quite their faces she longed to hold, voices she ached to hear clearly. "Mommy," an echoing voice called, drifting like smoke, both familiar and mysterious. It flickered like a candle flickering in the wind, and she grasped desperately at the sound, trying to pull it close. "Lily? Max?" The words spilled from her lips, her heart pounding louder than the chaotic laughter swelling around her. "Where are you?" "I'm coming." She felt the sweat on her skin, the frantic pulse of her heart syncing with the pulsing light, each beat a desperate plea for connection, for rescue. But the shadows tightened. The figure that had haunted her lurked just outside reach, its rotted gray hand extending toward her like a vulture-esque claw. "You are too late, Jessica," it hissed, the venom dripping from its words. "Have you ever considered that you may be the threat?" She recoiled, clenching her fists. "I want to listen to you." But doubt crept in, gnawing at the edges of her resolve. The reflection of that figure twisted into shapes of her fears, highlighting moments of weakness and guilt, those late nights she couldn't be there for her kids, the arguments they had, the neglect that chipped away at their bonds. It laughed a monstrous sound that echoed in her mind. Did you think love alone would protect them? Panic surged, squeezing her heart like a vice. Had she gambled everything on false hope? Jessica squeezed her eyes shut, willing the shadows away. "No, I am their mother. I will save them." The shadows recoiled momentarily, but the laughter grew louder. Their eyes flickered with twisted glee. "You think this is about saving them? You've walked straight into our domain. You willingly traded your soul for a mere dream." The ground beneath her trembled. The glowing figures began to dissolve into wisps, their features fading like morning mist. "Mommy!" The cries grew distant, the warmth of their calls pulling further away, like a cruel mirage she could never reach. Gripping her temples, Jessica felt the weight of despair pressing on her chest. She couldn't lose them again. Not like this. With every ounce of will, she focused on their faces, the joy they brought her, the laughter. She willed the light to shine brighter, shoving against the darkness with a fierce determination. "Lily, Max, I'm here. I'm coming." As if answering her call, the light surged, wrapping around her like a protective cocoon. The shadows recoiled, their whispers rising into shrieks, angry and terrified. A blinding flash enveloped her, and suddenly, she was suspended in a weightless void. There was an echo her children laughing. But was it real? Jessica's heart raced as she fluttered between dimensions, every second stretching into eternity. Around her, space twisted and turned, time itself felt broken and wrong. Then silence fell. A heavy, suffocating silence that wrapped around her like a shroud. It was eerie, unsettling. The laughter had vanished, leaving behind an oppressive weight. The shadows pulsed, tightening once again, and from the depths, a dreadful growl slithered through the darkness. "Welcome home," it hissed as the void shattered. Jessica's breath caught, eyes wide, as the world around her began to morph. The familiar shapes twisted, becoming tainted versions of the home she once knew, the very walls of her life. She could feel it, a dreadful understanding creeping in, that she had not escaped at all. She had just stepped into a nightmare of her own making. What had she unleashed? And where were Lily and Max now, in this new, twisted realm? A flicker of movement caught her eye, a small figure darting through the shadows, a laugh echoing in the distance that chilled her to the bone. Jessica's heart sank as the realization washed over her. The darkness hungered. Would she have to fight again to reclaim her children, or had she already lost them to the shadows forever? The air thickened with a heaviness that clawed at Jessica's throat, suffocating all hope. She stumbled forward, her pulse racing, each beat a desperate call to her children. The shadows twisted around her, their whispers puncturing the silence like sharp knives. "Mommy," the voice echoed again, but it wasn't a laugh this time. It sounded strained, terrified. Panic shot through her. "Lily, Max," she called out, her voice raw. She was frantic, feeling the walls of her childhood home box her in, suffocating her. The familiar turned sinister, overtaken by darkness. The figure that haunted her flickered ahead, barely visible, its face shadowed but unmistakably sinister. It tilted its head, watching her with glee. "They're closer than you think," it crooned, the words oozing malice. "But you'll never touch them. Not in this world." An icy dread washed over her. It wasn't just a game. The darkness was alive, pulsating with a hunger that mirrored her own desperation. Every fiber of her being screamed to turn back. But where would she go? This was the only place she knew, or thought she knew. Get away from them, she shouted, the defiance ripping out of her like a wild animal. But the shadows only laughed, a cacophony of sinister amusement. The laughter swirled around her, curdling her stomach. Each echo was a promise of torment, of her failures laid bare. She pressed forward, slipping through twisted corridors that felt more like a labyrinth than a home. The walls pulsed, morphing as her fear fueled the malevolence. Shattered picture frames hung at odd angles, showing grotesque versions of her family laughing faces that turned into anguished masks. "Stop it," she cried, slapping a hand against the wall. It felt alive beneath her palm, vibrating with a cruel energy. The shadows hissed in response, tightening their embrace around her, feeding off her fear. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the hallway, snatching her breath and leaving a bitter taste of ash on her tongue. In the shuddering silence, she heard it again, a soft whisper, a child's laugh echoing from the depths of the house. "Mommy, come play." Jessica's heart plummeted. It was Lily, but the voice felt tainted, dripping with something dark and wrong. The shadows thrummed with anticipation, as if they knew she would follow. She had to. Rushing toward the sound, Jessica dashed through the twisted halls, desperation fueling her speed. With each step, the shadows pressed against her, clawing at her thoughts, dragging her down into a pit of despair. Not much further the whispers came again, coaxing, enticing. They spun around her, pulling her deeper into their domain, and a flicker of doubt whispered in her mind, what if she was too late? Jessica skidded to a halt at the entrance of the living room. Dim light flickered from the corners, illuminating the familiar space, but twisted. The furniture was askew. The walls dripped with something dark and viscous. A sense of dread crawled up her spine as tiny hands reached out from the shadowy corners, grasping and clawing. "Mommy, help us," came the chorus, but it was layered, overlapping. Blurred voices cried in unison, each echo twisting the words. "Stop," she screamed, feeling her sanity slip. "Stop it." But the shadows tightened, silhouettes shifting and writhing as they pulled her closer to a center point, their heart, their source. Her children were mere phantoms, essays of pain lost in the darkness of their cries. Trembling, she stepped toward the shadows, reaching out, but an invisible force knocked her back. It was a wall of despair, a barrier forged from her very guilt and grief. There was a pause. The shadows watched her, waiting. She felt their hunger, their eagerness for her surrender. The figure loomed larger, obscuring everything she loved with its twisted form. "Join us, Jessica," it hissed, voice dripping with temptation. Embrace the darkness in that moment. An unbearable choice loomed before her. Would she fall into the abyss to save her children, or fight and face what sharing that darkness would truly mean? A new flicker of laughter echoed in the hall, and with it, the shadows lunged toward her in a wild frenzy. What was scattered now wouldn't remain unpunished. Jessica's heartbeat pounded wildly in her ears. How much time did she have left before the darkness consumed everything? The pain of potential loss twisted in her gut. "Fight," she murmured. But for how long could she resist? Each flicker and laugh wrapped more tightly around her soul. The chaos enveloped her, and just as she thought she might collapse, her phone vibrated fiercely in her pocket. The screen lit up with a message against the dark. "Jessica, where are you?" No. Would it pull her back? Or was it merely another trick of the shadows? Caught between despair and fragile hope, every choice grew heavier. She had to escape, but every instinct whispered to stay. Would she summon the strength to break free, or would her longing prove to be her downfall? Jessica's heart raced as she fumbled for her phone, the chilling ambience pressing down on her every thought. The message blinked like a beacon of hope, yet it also felt like a cruel taunt from the shadows. She hesitated, glancing back at the encroaching dark figures that danced at the edges of her vision. "Please, don't be a trick," she whispered, her fingers shaking as she typed a frantic reply. "I'm coming. Where are you?" The shadows jerked at her words, sharp and hungry. Each voice of her children became a jagged edge, piercing her with their cries. "Mommy, help us," they wailed, singing sweetly from the depths of the dark corners, the corners swirling with an inky blackness that threatened to swallow her whole. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. It was a video. With trembling hands, she pressed play. The screen flickered to life, showing Lily and Max, their faces pale and etched with fear. They stood within an unrecognizable room that wasn't the playroom she remembered. Walls lined with grotesque murals twisted and stretched toward them, almost pulsating, alive with malevolence. "Mommy, we're scared. Please come," Lily cried, her voice breaking. The image blurred, and Jessica could almost feel the heat from her children's terror crawling across her skin like fire ants. "Lily! Max!" she screamed, the sound ricocheting through the twisted living room. In response, the shadows enveloped her further, a suffocating curtain of darkness that pressed down upon her like lead. The laughter grew louder, a sinister symphony that echoed off the walls. She seized the moment, sprinting toward the video, toward their cries, her movements fueled by adrenaline. But the shadows coiled tighter, tugging at the hem of her pants, attempting to pull her down into despair. "No!" she shouted, breaking free with determination. The light flickered precariously, illuminating the scene just enough to reveal the twisted figures lurking at the edges. They were like puppets on invisible strings, their faces twisted in grotesque mockeries of joy. "Join us, Mommy," they sang in harmony, the mocking tone infuriating yet almost inviting. "Shut up," she yelled, lurching forward, driven by anguish and rage. But just as she took a step closer, the phone slipped from her fingers, crashing to the floor, shattering the illusion of safety she grasped at. "Mommy?" came Lily's voice again, distinct now. Its sweetness was a blade, cutting her heart as despair coursed through her veins. "Help us, it's waiting." Jessica hit her knees, scrambling to retrieve the device, but it lay lifeless, showing nothing but the reflection of her terror in the darkened room. She glanced around, panic clawing at her throat like a hungry beast. The shadows danced closer, whispering promises of security that felt more like a trap. "Don't listen to them," she implored herself. "You have to find them." But the darkness responded, a rasping echo that wrapped around her throat. "You'll never find them, not without us." Jessica's breath hitched. The air grew thick, impossibly dense, suffocating her senses. She could see it now, the giant shadow looming over her, its hunger palpable. It reeked of despair, of pain, and her heart trembled within her chest. With no time left to waste, she forced herself to stand. Gathering her will, she pushed back against the encroaching darkness. "I will not be yours," she screamed, her voice fierce. Suddenly, a strong wind whipped through, scattering the shadows like frightened birds. She took a deep breath, snapping the sliver of fear in her heart. If she was to save her children, she had to confront it. She turned to the bleak heart of the darkness, a black hole that pulsed with malicious energy. "Where are they?" she demanded, voice steady despite the chaos. The figure shrank back slightly, twisting and writhing as silence hung heavily. Then, a deep, rumbling laugh vibrated through the air. "Your choice to find them comes with a price," and just like that, the shadows surged forward, swallowing her whole into an abyss so deep, she feared she'd never see the light again. In the depths of blackness, she heard the final words of the figure, echoing ominously through the void. "You've made a deal, Jessica, only now can the truth be revealed. Step carefully, or the next souls you seek may be your own." What awaited her in the dark? Would she stumble upon the truth, or lose herself forever to the shadows? Darkness enveloped Jessica, but somewhere in that suffocating void, a faint whisper trickled through, brushing against her mind like a cold finger. "What are you willing to sacrifice?" It crooned, the voice slippery, dancing inside her thoughts. She clenched her fists, forcing each breath to steady her racing heart. "I'll do whatever it takes to save them," she whispered, though even she could hear the tremor in her voice. As if in response, the shadows tightened their grip, pulsing with an insatiable hunger. "Then listen closely," The voice rasped, echoing from all around. You must confront the truth about your children and yourself. A distant flicker of light began to pulse in the abyss. It grew brighter, illuminating the contours of the oppressive darkness. Shapes emerged, shifting and swirling like smoke. They took the form of her children, though their features were distorted, dark eyes flashing with urgent desperation. "Mommy!" Max's voice cried out, distant and warped. "Help us! We're trapped. Where are you?" She shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. "I can't see you. Face your fear," Lily echoed softly, her voice dripping with sorrow. "It's all inside you." The light surged, revealing walls painted with their fears, twisted depictions of moments Jessica wished she could forget. Max was alone, lost in a crowd of faceless figures. Lily was trapped in a room full of mirrors, each one reflecting her terror. With every image, the shadows quivered, hungry for her despair. Glimmers of memory rushed through Jessica's mind, her children's nightmares she had brushed aside, the times they called for help but weren't heard. Realization crashed down like a tidal wave. The shadows thrived on her neglect, feasting on the very essence of her guilt. "No!" she screamed, pushing against the darkness, but it only pressed in tighter, wrapping around her like chains. "This isn't who I am. I can save you. I will not let you take them." But the voice, chilling and omnipotent, spoke again. "What price will you pay, Jessica? This darkness hungers for your memory, your love, your essence." Her heart thundered. If she let them take her, would her children be saved? What is love, after all, if not a willingness to sacrifice? She was teetering on the edge of madness, clawing for a decision that felt impossibly heavy. "Mommy, please," Lily's voice echoed through the chaos. "Don't give in." Jessica surged forward, defiance igniting her spirit. "I refuse. If you want a price, I'll give you something else." The figure shrieked, a sound that made her insides twist. "Then tell me your truth. Reveal the darkest parts of your heart. Only then can you save them." A rush of memories flooded her consciousness, shadows of fears she had hidden away. "I was afraid," she stammered. "Afraid I wouldn't be enough, that I'd fail them. I didn't listen when they needed me." Each confession tore through her like glass, cutting deeper into her own heart. "Keep going," the shadows urged, their voices rising in a cacophony of dark delight. I thought if I ignored it, it would go away." The tears streamed down her face, hot and bitter. "But I was wrong. I love them, but I was too afraid to face the truth, too afraid to be their mother." "Then surrender yourself," the voice hissed, a promise slithering through the whirling gloom. "Give yourself fully to the darkness." "No," she cried, summoning strength she didn't know she had. "I choose to face it, no matter what." In that moment, the shadows surged forward, crashing into her like a wave. She gasped, but instead of despair, she felt something else, power rising within her, fueled by determination. The darkness quaked, shifting and rippling. "Your resolve? It stings," the voice seethed, transforming into a chilling wail. Jessica stood firm, refusing to let it swallow her whole. "Take me instead. Let my children go. They deserve to be free." But the shadows shrieked louder, and in that moment, Jessica realized freedom often comes at an unimaginable cost, and the chaos. Images of her children flickered at the edges of her vision. Would they emerge from this darkness, or would she become the shadow that consumed her own light? "Mommy!" came their echoing cries, drawing her deeper into the turbulent shadows, urging her towards a decision that would shape the fate of them all. What would she discover in this dance with the darkness? A fate worse than loss, or a chance to reclaim what she had almost let slip away? Jessica felt a strange warmth begin to wrap around her, shifting the weight of despair into something almost tender. It was love, her love that surged from her heart, radiating outwards even in the suffocating darkness. It threaded through every shadow, pulsating, pushing against the cold grip that seemed desperate to consume her. "Please, let them go," she cried, her voice rising above the cacophony of whispers that sought to drown her out. Images of Lily and Max filled her mind, their laughter echoing through the canvas of her heart, a stark contrast to the flickering darkness. Fear slipped away as she dug her heels into the brittle shadows, her spirit igniting with fierce determination. I am their mother. I refuse to be broken. The shadows recoiled, quaking under the weight of her proclamation. Their mocking laughter faded, replaced by an ominous silence, as if the darkness itself had paused to hear her. In that stillness, Jessica pressed on, calling out to the essence of her children, her voice unwavering, fueled by something deep within. Lily, Max, I'm coming for you. I will find you. With each word, the embers of her resolve sparked brighter, igniting trails of light amongst the inky black. A sudden gust of wind burst forth, scattering the overwhelming blackness that sought to smother her spirit. The figures pressing against her hesitated, retreating, their hungry whispers dampening. Then she saw them, a shimmer of light flickering beyond the shadowy veil, illuminating the faces of her children, waiting for her beyond the sinister depths. Mommy! They cried in unison, their voices now crystal clear, their outstretched hands reaching towards her with desperate hope. Summoning all the strength she had left, Jessica surged forward. The darkness thrashed around her, but she pressed on, propelled by the brightness of her love. I won't let you take them, she screamed, feeling the cold tendrils of fear pull at her ankles. I will not be a puppet to this darkness. Finally, she broke through, bursting into a radiant light that swallowed the shadows whole. Jessica emerged into a vast expanse, her heart racing as joy enveloped her. She stumbled, blinking against the brilliance, and there, just beyond her, were Lily and Max, their faces illuminated with joy, free of shadows, smiling brightly. Mommy! They cried, rushing toward her. Jessica dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around them, their warmth flooding her with an overwhelming sense of relief. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she held them close. I thought I lost you, she sobbed, rocking them back and forth. The shadows shrank in the distance, pushed back by the light, their sinister whispers fading into nothing. We're okay now, Max said, his small hands clasping her face. You came. Lily nodded vigorously, her bright eyes sparkling. You found us, Mommy. We knew you would. Jessica's heart swelled as she looked into their eyes, their innocence shining as bright as the sun. I'll never let you go again, she promised, her voice fierce and soft all at once. Not to the darkness or anything else. I will always find you. The radiant light pulsed, surrounding them. As the last remnants of darkness slipped away, a feeling of tranquility settled. Everything felt right again. Jessica led her children back towards the path of warmth, security, and love. Her head held high as they stepped forward. The world around them transformed. They found themselves back in their colorful, chaotic kitchen, the warmth of home wrapping around them. The faint smell of the painted eggs lingered in the air, tangible evidence of their earlier joy. We should finish decorating, Jessica said, her voice breaking the peaceful silence. A new sparkle of determination lit her eyes, one never to be dimmed again. Yes, Lily piped up, tugging on Jess' hand as they rushed toward the table together, laughter spilling forth once more. Jessica sighed in relief, listening to the symphony of her children's giggles. Shadows had tried to squeeze their way in. They tried to break her. But those moments were lost beneath the security of love, an unshakable bond that no darkness could ever sever. So as they decorated, Jessica glanced out the window at the sun setting on the serene suburban street. There was magic in the twilight hour, a reminder of the power of light over dark. And as for the haunting shadows, they would not return, because Jessica knew now, more than ever, the drive of a mother's heart could illuminate the deepest night. Now as the credits roll and we wrap up this spine-chilling tale, remember to hold your loved ones close. Life can throw shadows, but together, you can always find the light. Don't wait any longer. You need to subscribe now. Smash that like button right now to help us reach our next story. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories. Let us hear how you interpreted the shadows and light. And don't forget to share this video with at least 5 friends who need this conclusion in their lives. This is the moment to show your support. Let's conquer the darkness together.